All right. Okay. So yeah, I mean, we were talking just then about being physically active, and I saw you guys a few weeks ago in Leeds, in
Mm.
West Yorkshire, and I've got to ask. I mean, you say you're doing the exercise when you're at home, but how do you maintain such a level of intensity and energy? Obviously you can't speak for the rest of the band who are all equally as intense and energetic, but you were you were a few days in, you were a while in when you got to Leeds. So how do you maintain that, Rick, that energy after doing Pile for so long and so many years?
Um, well, I mean, I do think that trying to take care of ourselves individually and collectively, I think does go a long way. And the sleep part of it also helps. I mean, at that point in the trip too, there are like nuances to the performance piece in terms of energy, meaning that like, you know, we did a 7 week US tour playing like an hour plus every night, or for every show, and then 10 days off and then back on. So at that point, at least my body and my mind are prepared for what that ends up looking like physically. So, and also I get like tuned to that. So my voice knows where like I need to push or where I can pull back, and like kind of moments where I can take like slow my breathing. And so there's like a rhythm to it that gets established and is becomes kind of mechanical,
Right.
that makes it easier to be able to sort of reserve energy for that show every time we do it. But I'd say that leading up to it, there's a bunch of work that comes in to, I mean, just kind of this stuff of just like exercising and making sure that like I'm doing what I can, because on the road, the circumstances are so different,
Yeah.
meaning, the sleep is wherever you can, as much as you can get whenever you can find it, kind of.
Yeah.
And as far as like nutrition is concerned, it's like, so it's there are challenges there. So it's really like the preparation leading up to it, and then kind of the diligence that you can find out on the road. I will say, well, by the time we got to Leeds, I was maybe some of the most exhausted I have been
Right.
on tour. Um, it was still a fun show, and I still feel like we hold ourselves to, like, when we play, it's like we dedicate ourselves to that. But yeah, it is fatiguing for sure.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also, the first 2 weeks of that trip, from I think from like Switzerland up through Germany, I had like a sinus infection.
Oh,
So
yeah.
um, that was definitely mentally taxing. Fortunately, it didn't really affect my voice too much. Um, but
Mhm.
I was just exhausted, and it was just, yeah, psychologically took a toll. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think it's a testament to all of you that again you sort of put such an energy into the performance. It kind of feels like it's there was such a great community of people there, and in terms of the local scene and stuff, it just seems like is it the adrenaline? I mean, I guess that's the cliche, isn't it? Like the adrenaline that gets you through, and the vibe of the show. It seemed like everybody was having such a wonderful time. I wonder if that plays a factor because you have such a dedicated fan base of people that really love what you do. Does that kind of pull you forward? And not to be
Most
too,
definitely.
not to be too over the top or cliche, but
No, it's not. I mean, I have experienced that, even more direct versions of of that exact thing. We actually played a festival. I won't say which one, but it was the biggest. It was the biggest festival that we'd ever played,
mm,
and we played a few shows there, and I got COVID
right.
right right before, and it was at because there was a club show, and then there was like the big festival show.
Mm,
So at the club show is where I got it. It was a very intimate setting. So um
yeah.
and then the following couple of days, when I had it the worst, was you know where I was supposed to play the biggest show. So It's like, we'll see how this goes. But then I played and it was fine.
Right.
Like the adrenaline really did. And so, you play the show and be like, we did it. And then, about hour, 2 hours later, it's just like you crash really hard. So yeah,
Yeah.
there is that for sure, where it's like you can summon that, but it's definitely at a cost. And
Yeah.
I think that that's what the touring ends up kind of doing. It's like, that you can kind of dig deep and be able to do that every night, but you're paying for it on the back end. So like during the day, it's yeah, it can be, it's
Yeah.
just, it can be a heavy load day after day.
Yeah, the price of art and creativity.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
One might say. I mean, that brings me nicely to my next question, because Pile, has been around. It's sort of early 2010s. There's a lot of great work there that but clearly, I think you can hear as a listener, you've put your heart and soul into. I wonder how. And again, it's another question where you can't speak for the members of your band, but for you, how would you say you've changed and developed? What have you learned about yourself? It could be, staying more fit staying more fit where you can, getting sleep where you can, like you've just said there, Rick. But what are the key things that you would sort of say you've learned from the Rick of 2010, for example, to where you are now in 2025, having the back catalogue, the popularity, not that that may matter to you as much, but how, what would you say the key things you've learned since you began on this journey to where you are now, would you say?
It was definitely more of an exploration of just, I think that there's being a younger person. It was like all of it was still new at that point. So there was sort of an element of just like, well, let's just go for it. And even if we don't get paid, it'll be it'll be fine. And also, as far as a younger person's constitution, also, it's like I was able to, I was drinking every night and I was smoking cigarettes and all that.
Yeah.
And just kind of, and that was fine. That was fine. That was like part of the sort of exploration, is just trying to, figure out how to turn this, how to see if this thing could grow. And
Yeah.
it did, fortunately. And as it
Yeah.
became a more, and I took, even though I was still drinking and smoking and this and that, and it was an exploration, I still took it very seriously. So there was a lot for me to learn in terms of like running it as a business, which I ultimately wanted to do. And as that started to take shape and became more financially sustainable, I think that I felt a greater sense of responsibility to sort of keep that going, both to the people that had committed to doing it and to myself, and to
Yeah.
like sort of build a future that made sense. I then had to start looking towards what it might look like 10 years from now to be able to continue to do it. So, it was about 5 years in that I went from, I was working at a grocery store and the band had started and blah, blah, blah. I quit that grocery store job and I moved into our practice space. And that's when I was like, music full time. And it was 5 years after, or 3 years after that, that I like stopped drinking and stopped smoking and all that. So I think that I put more of a priority on my health. And, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was, once it became more of a responsibility to kind of keep the thing going. So I think it's changed, and it continues to change, and it's not
Yeah.
necessarily linear either. Because I think, as much as I was very militant at a time. I was like, I don't drink, I don't smoke, and we did this last tour, and we made some friends at this band Hesa. And the last night that we hung out, they're like, "You come out for a drink?" And of course, like I put my drinking shoes back on, and I was right back at it. But it's like, that's been a personal thing for me. I know that like sobriety and addiction is different for everybody. I think that for me, it's like, I know that I could very easily be a functional alcoholic.
Yeah.
So understanding that, but also knowing the costs of
Yeah.
acquiescing to that that tendency,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that that's pretty much it. It's just a normal growing up stuff of just like being like, oh, the body will break down at some point, and it'll do it a lot quicker if I keep doing these things. So
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Like I guess it's picking your picking your moments. Like it's interesting because a lot of people, will say, for example, they quit drinking, so that's it. But actually, for example, that moment that you shared with that band, it required you to go out and have a drink. You don't have to like completely give in to you know becoming a functioning alcoholic, for example. There are other ways around it. Not that I'm saying, people should just give up and have a drink whenever they want, if they're dealing with those
sure,
things. But it's a very individual thing, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
it is absolutely, and yeah, we were, Shah Jahan was playing guitar for us on
Mm,
this trip.
mm.
He's completely sober, and he has a different relationship with it than I have with it, that than Alex has with it, than Chris has. So it's really not, it's more just my personal experience with
Yeah,
it. So
yeah.
I know
Um,
that it means different things to different people, but that is one that I've had to pay close attention to and note its effect on my
yeah,
life. So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think again, sort of going back to what you were saying before about having an idea about what the band was going to be like in 10 years in terms of the success and in terms of how you make it sustainable. We did like a email Q&A a few years ago, and you responded to my question about defining success as a combination of freedom and options is a marker of success. So like the idea of freedom and having options, I imagine, to create as you wish. That was like 2023. Do you still feel the same way, having that freedom, having the options to create, to go on tour, to do those things under your own steam? Is that how you would still define success, Rick?
yeah, I think that there is. I mean, I think that I do still, that still feels true. It also feels so broad
Hmm.
that it is kind of easy to agree with, because I think some of the options that maybe I would refer to, it could either be like, contractual, depending on what your situation is musically, like whether or not you're bound by a label or whatever, or agency, or any number of things that a musician um, can, those kind of relationships that they can find themselves embroiled in.
Yeah,
But um, I also think that part of the options piece comes from financial sustainability. So if you have money, then you have at least in the society that both you and I live in, it provides you both freedom and options. So
true.
um, yeah, I think that there is still truth to that. Um, and yeah, there's the money piece definitely is a part of that, but it's not the entire
Yeah,
picture.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Interesting. So it's less about the finance and more about, yeah, and more about the, um, yeah, yeah. I've always felt like Pyle from watching before I got to see you guys play, from watching, like video. I always thought it was an experience, but I respected that, like, you've been able to sustain it again, like, for so long. You've been doing it for such a long time. So it's about using the money that you maybe get to keep it going, but not defining it, the Pyle experience, by that, if that makes sense.
yeah, and I mean, it's been a dance too, because
Yeah.
there are um, the money part of it is extremely important, but more than that, it's um, because it is a band now. Even it started as a solo project, but it is a band now. So it's like, thinking of it that way, it's not just about money, because then you're dealing with the needs of the individual, and in regards to how it relates to the collective. So um someone that's like, well, the money stuff isn't really as important to me, like, but the time is, and being away for months at a time is more of a strain on my life than uh making less money, or or whatever it is, or just like the touring itself being that much of a physical strain on one's life. So it varies from person to person, and it's kind of an ever moving target.
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
so it's yeah, it's interesting in that way. I mean, it makes it that much more of a complicated question to
Yeah.
answer, you know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's very unique to you and the band, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I've got a few more questions. I want to talk about the new record as well a little bit. But
Hmm.
I remember again when we did that same Q&A, you sort of talked about how your relationship with the earlier records can sometimes feel a bit like repeating the same things over and over again. Because you get so used to it. And I guess it alludes back to what you said at the beginning of this, where it can feel a bit mechanical. Now, when the crowd goes nuts for a prom song or a Don't Touch Anything, the stuff from those old songs, I wonder, and this is going to sound, it's not meant to sound confrontational, but I wonder, as someone that's you like to create, you like to bring out new music every couple of years, do you feel any resentment towards those earlier songs and just like having to do them all the time? I know that sounds like a weird question, but because again, you strike me as a very creative person that wants to evolve and create new music quite a lot, quite regularly for a lot of bands, every 2 years pretty much. So I wonder, is there any kind of, maybe resentment's the wrong word, but annoyance that you have to do those songs over and over, repeat them over and over? And I guess I think you said they can lose meaning as well.
Mm. Well, I think maybe a better way of putting it is that they change meaning,
Right,
because
right.
the way that I felt when I was writing it or recording it is it's never going to be the same as it is even from night to night as I play it. So but I do think that that's kind of changed. I also think that with the last record I was more in a place of I wanted to get out of that sort of format of like being a rock band. I think that the idea of identity, I think that like, you're right in that I very much value the creative act. So I like making stuff. And I think that when I was in having kind of reflected on this, it's like in those earlier times, it's like, well, we found a band, uh, and this is like, I can kind of live in this creative thing and see what happens from it. And those records are the result of that. And from it, I think that building an audience, the audience then decides in a way what your identity is.
Fair enough.
And I think that I felt restricted by that identity that people decided that we were. So trying to like push that out in as many directions as I could was the way of doing that. And I think that um, you know it's been a bit reframed in that, like, well, let's do the rock band thing again. And I think that there's maybe a sort of self-awareness of it now that I just didn't have
Right.
back then, of like what it is and what people are drawn to about it. And so that's cool to know what that is and to be able to make peace with that, and also to know that my creative output isn't solely bound to this one thing. It's just like started from that, and that's what people knew from it, and so therefore that's kind of what it is to them. What it is to me will always be a different thing. And not only that, but like what it is to me, like what Pile is to me, is not
Mm,
necessarily
mm.
the same as like what my creative output is as a whole. But
Yeah.
that was my sort of umbrella of like, this is all of my creative work. And I think that that's kind of come to change even in the past like year or so.
Right. Right.
Um, but to answer your question, sort of a long way of getting to it, but I don't feel any sort of resentment playing it, because it's like, I think that in those moments when it's like we're choosing to go to a place, um, like geographically, or literally choosing to go somewhere to then play these songs, it's like the objective is to share in an experience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, if you want us to do the thing that's going to get you excited, then we'll do the thing. you know, like, and I think that just seeing other people excited by that is enough. So,
Yeah.
um, and I have fun. I just have fun playing music in general. So, the fact that people connect with those songs is still, it's, yeah, it's a, I'll probably keep reflecting on it year after year of just like, you know, some of these songs we played some from like Jerk Routine too, which are like 16 years old. And it's still fun. And it's also like there are opportunities to play them like a little bit differently or like lean into certain things and those kind of nuances, which may not be read by an audience. Like they may not come across, at least not in a very like overt or explicit way. Like it may be a thing that's felt or one of those things, but
Mm.
like it's fun for us and it helps to keep it exciting. And also, every place that we play, every environment that we play is different in some kind of way. So there's something to interact with there beyond us just interacting with each other as musicians. So,
Right, right.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting. It's interesting, and I think that's, again, there's like a community. Again, we'll talk about that community. I've got two or three more questions, and I do want to talk about the community around the band a little more. There was something that I wanted to ask you about your voice. I know that you've said in previous interviews that you haven't always had a lot of confidence in your vocal. Now, when I listen to say a Loose and Not, and I listen to various Pile records, it doesn't sound like the kind of person that lacks confidence in their vocal, because there's a lot of dynamics in Pile songs, both sonically and vocally. Has your, I mean, there's two strands to this. The first one is, where did you first find your voice? Like when were you a kid, like shouting into the void? That sounds a bit extreme. Or were you like, when was the first time that you figured out that you could sing like that? Because I do think your vocal is very striking. I know there's a lot of people online that agree with that. So where did you first find your voice, Rick? And can you sort of take me back to that moment, if that's okay?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I was 12 really when I started singing, and there was like you know, it was a band in junior high school, and they were all friends of mine, and
Mm.
they didn't like their singer too much, so they kicked him out, and I was just hanging out at one of their band practices, and they asked me if I could sing, and I was like, I'll try. So, and that was when I started doing it, and and yeah, from there it was like, you know, we just did cover songs and all that, and I just really took to it. So I, yeah, so it was from that point. But I, you know, I go back and forth on how I feel about my voice. There are times that I do feel very self conscious about it, about my pitch and that sort of thing, and
Right.
then there are other times that I feel, you know, I think a lot of people feel this way, where it's like that they're like singing in their car or in their shower or whatever like that, and then it just feels great, and so there's like a kind of confidence in that. But of course, I've done a little bit more than just like singing in the car and in the shower. It's just, but I would say that there are moments where I feel very excited about how it sounds, and like I can listen back to it and be like, nice, that sounds great. I feel like that's a great representation of the song through my voice.
Yeah.
And then there are other times that it's like, so it's my my opinion of it is very, very fickle.
Right. Okay. Did you feel like with the most recent stuff, do you feel more? I don't know. People have different responses when when people use the word pride, especially with regards to their own stuff. Because I'm not saying that you're some kind of, or you're going to be some kind of egomaniac about it. But with this new stuff, like it's a great body of work. There's a great body of work you've got, in the last sort of, decades. But do you feel prouder of your vocal in 2025 with, like, I mean,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
again, as a listener, Sunshine and Balance Beams is such a sonically diverse record, as Pal is known for. But for you personally, do you feel proud of yourself, of your
Oh,
performance?
most definitely. I
Right.
think that and that was also like a very deliberate thing, talking to Miranda Sarah, who engineered the record, talking about the vocal. And she was like, you're going to leave the studio with a vocal that you like. And that was the guarantee. And she was right. And she was right. So And it's cool too because there are moments on the record where ordinarily I wouldn't like. I think "Bouncing in Blue" was one where like the vocal is very upfront, and that's sort of I would tense up at first, even thinking about it being there. Um, and it's interesting now listening back to it, and it's like, well, I couldn't think of it honestly any lower in the mix. So I think that there is a part of it of just wrapping one's brain around the reality of like what is happening, and it's yeah, I feel more proud of my vocal performance
Cool.
on this record than previous records, which is exciting because that means I think that I've there are moments on past records where I've been like, nice, I nailed it,
Yeah.
but um, it's cool to strive for something a little more each time and to be like, okay, nice. I feel good about where that landed. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's great to hear, and I just because again, as a listener, I'm like, I know watching live, I'm like, how does this? And that was the question. That's why I wanted to ask it because I was like, how's that happen? But of course, as a performer, as an artist, you're going to be critical of yourself. You're going to be critical of your performance. But it's nice to hear that you're proud of where you're at, right? Which is cool.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. All right. Two more questions, then we're going to do the roundup because I know you've got other other places to be. I was particularly blown away by, I knew there was a community online and I've been listening for a long time. So I know that Pyle's community is there. But I remember watching you do the Declare Independence cover in Leeds, and just like a lot of people, and not to get political or anything, but there's so many people behind what you do that believe in not just the music, but the values of Pyle. And that's very difficult to cultivate. Some bands, I know a lot of bands that refuse to be political in their music because they want, they want just the support of the music. But there seems to be a real sort of respect in your fan base from well being around it, but also seeing how the community responds to you guys. Do you feel that? Do you feel the respect of your fan base? It's people listen to the music, people buy the records, but people seem to really they get they feel it feels like they get you, they get Pyle, they want to support you, they want to get behind everything that you're doing.
Yeah, generally, yes.
Right.
I think that the political stuff is, um, you know, there's the internet, so it's like there are as many people with raised fists and support, uh, uh, but there are a few that will trickle in that have
Yeah.
something to say. Um, but yeah, for the most part, it's great. And I also do believe to your point about artists that don't want to talk about things political because they want it to just be about the music. Unfortunately for them, it's still a political choice to not say anything at all. So as
Good
much
point.
as they don't want to, and the implications of that are exactly what they sound like. So um, but yeah, I am grateful for that, and I do think that there's just a responsibility as people make an art. It's like if that's, and it's not to say that like, I mean, it's taken me a long time to figure out how to use my voice for that. I think that I've had strong beliefs about, strong political beliefs for a long time, but trying to find a way that feels honest in the art that doesn't distract from it or feel like it's pandering or feel like it's um yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I've loved art that is very political, but I've also loved stuff that is more, does not have an overt political message. And I think for a long time it's like I would infuse what I did with my beliefs about the world, but it was not an easy thing to pick out.
Mm.
And it definitely was a line in the sand when it was doing the song about Stephen Miller. which is like as direct as I could possibly go with it, which felt good, because it felt like a thing to say out loud and to just really single out somebody. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I guess all of that to say, I am extremely grateful that there are people that are willing to, um, that support us in doing that. And I hope also that there are people that maybe have been confused or on the fence or unsure about where they lean politically, but hearing an artist like us, which is not necessarily trying to assault them with their political views, but at least to reflect on why they believe what they believe. Like that is really, I think that there's such power in art by like, because, can you make beautiful art, and then that's a way to somebody how they think and how they feel and that sort of thing. Because living in this world now, you and I both know that you could present somebody who believes something and present them with facts to the exact opposite, and it's not necessarily going to change their mind. So I think that it's important to try to reach people in other ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, sometimes that is very direct, and sometimes that does still like shock people, or sometimes people don't agree. They see the world differently, whatever it is. But I think that I mean, obviously, this is coming from somebody who, art's had a very profound effect on my life and the way that I think. And I grew up listening to like punk bands. And so, a band like Fugazi has very much shaped the way that I see the world. And it's not to say that I agree with every single thing that Ian MacKaye says, but he is a proponent of critical thinking and, yeah, and their art is very political in ways that I think do the thing that I would like to do, which is to like, it's still very artful, but it communicates something important. There's something being said in the music. So, and Bob Dylan too. I mean, he gets a lot more abstract, and I know that he's been a pretty a prickly pear in terms of just his how he feels about being like a protest singer and all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of politics in his music, obviously. So that stuff has had a huge impact on me growing up. And if that's something that I can pass on to anybody else, just to at least invite them to think about these things, then that's a win for me. So
Fantastic. Yeah, I was stood next to a bunch of people that just like it was a couple of people that were really moved in various ways by I was at the side of the stage, and just so a lot of people really moved by it, and I think that's a beautiful thing. I saw Pyle's music politically, emotionally, etc., move a lot of people to a very. I'm sure some people crying. You know what I mean? So you never know, do you? So that's a beautiful thing. I appreciate your time, Rick. And I guess this is the bit that I've got to do the plugging bit. Obviously, there is a record out now, Sunshine and Balance Beams. Is there anything that I've missed today? Have I done my job properly? Is there anything you'd like to promote that I haven't talked about today?
Dom, you've done a fantastic job. Yeah, I think that covers everything as far as I'm aware, anyway.